And this idea that all old ideas are bad and all new ideas are good just isn't true, man. Like
Robbie Williams is doing the halftime show. That's an old idea that's still good. I mean, that's still going.
Like, in millennium.
It's obviously working.
That was that Carlos Alcaraz is 21, Yannick Sinner's 23. You're comparing the initial stages, the fledgling stages of a great rivalry with like the peak Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer, late 20s, early 30s, really, when they're all kind of...
And then, I mean, Donald steals the show, doesn't he? He steals the absolute show. When Reece James turns and kind of goes, "Are you not leaving?" He's like, "No, I'm going to stay with you guys."
Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode number 51 with myself, David, Mr. Oliver Wilson on the pod this week. I want to talk about the Club World Cup. I want to talk about the Americanization of the beautiful game. Let's talk about the demise of Paris Saint-Germain on the night. Let's also talk about Crystal Palace, Ollie, being relegated to the Conference League, having won the FA Cup, thought they were in the Europa League. Let's talk Wimbledon, Yannick Sinner beating Carlos Alcaraz, Iga Swiatek winning 6-love in the women's final. I'm sure there's some golf and lots of other bits beside. But, mate, how are you? And actually, before I say how are you, there is no better place on planet Earth to be in June and July than the United Kingdom. This is an astonishing part of the world for June and July, and especially as that temperature gauge every year is just nudging up, and it's a deeply flawed country, but for those 2 months, it's a beautiful place to be, mate. It's a beautiful place to be.
I love it. I'm a big fan of vacationing in the UK during the summer months.
Holiday.
And then, well,
if you want to talk about the Americanization,
much like the Club World Cup, I want to bring
the Americanization of Ollie Wilson. We'll get stuck in right now.
Well, and I'll take the subway in London, and find it a bit hot and stuff. I mean, no, I think it's great. I love this. I love this country in the summer. It's awesome. It's just. There's a few months in winter that are really tough, but
6
generally it's pretty great. No, don't give me that. Christmas is awesome. October and November are a bit tough, and I think
October to March is a write-off, mate.
Nah, December's good. Christmas feel around the place is strong. That gets you through it. There's a lot of social stuff going on. Mid-January to early March is the slog. That's a real grind, that. But yeah, everything else is all good, mate.
Bit of housekeeping, Mr. Wilson.
Bit of housekeeping.
Yeah, go on. You were going to say, but...
No, go nuts. I want to hear.
Okay, so I met on Saturday a couple of our loyal listeners, and they gave some feedback, which I agree with. I've chatted to you, I think, off-pod a couple of times about this, Ollie, and they were like, don't make this podcast more than an hour. Everything that needs to be said can be said in 59 minutes. So we're going to go for that today, Ollie. And right. If necessary, I will cut us short on 59 minutes. We're already 3 minutes in where we've said practically nothing. So here we go. Here's another 56 minutes of magic. What do you think, Ollie? All future pods will try and get to 59.
I shouldn't be raving about almost joining the pantheon of sporting greats this weekend then, or anything like that. All right, fair enough.
If it can't fit in 59 minutes, mate, it's not good enough to fit in the pod. Let's start with football. Let's start talking about how Americanization of football will ultimately, if it has not done so already, destroy the beautiful game. For me, Ollie, and I'm referring, of course, to the Club World Cup, but I'm referring more macro to what we've seen lately. The Americanization of football must end now. The way it has quickly and then suddenly infiltrated the beautiful game is so depressing to me. And the main source of my concern and annoyance here is that we've slowed down the game. It's the constant interruptions, mate. It's VAR. It's 5 substitutions. It's the cooling breaks. It's the extended halftime show now that we saw in the Club World Cup final. It's the pre-game stuff. It's everything. We have killed the momentum, the spontaneity, and ultimately the joy about football, which is what makes it the greatest sport in the world. And I'm sorry, this has come from the United States of America. It has. Like, all of this Americanization of the sport, maybe it works over there. I don't see how it enhances football. And what I'm watching now is this really stuttered, slow sport. And I'm extremely worried. And the Club World Cup final, mate, I mean, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Like, first of all, in a pre-match show, why am I watching Robbie Williams dressed like a 17-year-old for 15 minutes? Like, absolutely absurd. Then the half-time was 24 minutes long, right? Now, Ollie, how long do you think the traditional half-time of 15 minutes has been in place? Take a guess.
Let's go with 1910.
Yeah, it's about 100 years. So unofficially, about 100 years ago, they introduced this 10 to 15-minute break. So that's been pretty much set in stone for 100 years. And all of a sudden now, it's now 24 minutes in the Club World Cup final. And for those saying that was a one-off event, like, don't be so naive. Do not be so naive. Don't you think when there's more games and more competitions and more money, do you not think that half time is going to be extended from 15 minutes to 24 minutes, now half an hour? Why not 45 minutes? Why not an hour? Like, so that will happen to football. And I think that, like, who voted for this, man? Like, who signed off on all this stuff? Like, because your average European football fan did not. And this all ends, obviously, with Donald Trump taking a penalty at the World Cup final at half-time or pre-match. I mean, there's no... I don't know who's going in goal for that, maybe Melania. But this definitely ends somehow with Donald Trump taking a penalty at the 2026 World Cup. But the Americanization of football, Ollie, I don't know what to say, mate. It has happened, as I say, suddenly, like slowly and then suddenly. And I don't know how to stop it.
Firstly, if we're doing anything, we're putting Hillary Clinton in goal to try and save that penalty against Donald Trump. And then Donald can claim that she was off the line when he struck the penalty, and it's another example of crooked Hillary cheating the system, trying to get one over on him. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the dream scenario. But I think you're being pretty rude and obnoxious, to be honest here, Dave. I'm not going to lie. I think this is really arrogant. I think this is... We're talking about a world which Dave Windsor wants. We're not talking about the global game and what's good for expanding the sport and making it better globally, because at the end of the day,
you think all this stuff makes it better?
I think all this stuff is inevitable. I don't.
That wasn't my question.
I don't think it personally makes it that much better. I don't think it really improves it. I don't enjoy a pre-match ceremony. The halftime show, I get. It's an Americanized thing, but I've seen it before. I don't think it necessarily works in football, but I'm also willing to say there's no reason that it wouldn't work in football. I can't see why a halftime show is terrible for football, but great for a Super Bowl, aside from the fact that it's a thing that gets done in the Super Bowl and has been done for many years, and it's new to football, and people don't like change. But the trouble is, it's like we're trying to expand the game and make it to everyone and for everyone. And that means it's not just about now hitting football fans. It's about to be able to fund these competitions, to be able to fund what football now is. It's like the monster that we've all created. And the people at the top that make the money off it are going, right, fine, yeah, okay, we will keep pushing this down your throats. We'll give you all the football you want, but you're going to have to take some lumps with it as well. And these are some of the lumps. And like I said, I don't really like it. But this is what it is, because it's now about hitting the music fans. But which music? Well, we've got some reggaeton and we've got some Coldplay. So we're going to kick like Western culture and Latin American culture in the halftime show, with people wearing like Columbia shirts or Columbia shirt style attire and all that kind of thing. We're going to have something for the oldies with Robbie Williams, as you say, dressed up like he's a 14-year-old kid in an Adidas tracksuit. And like,
careful with calling Robbie Williams fans the oldies, but yeah.
I mean, it is. At the end of the day, like it's the Middle Ages and above that remember the Robbie Williams days. I don't think there are many people under the age of 20 that will go, oh yeah, I remember Millennium. That was a great album. Like, that's not happening. The kids aren't into that these days. They're on their drum and bass and their I don't know, electro music or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, we're trying to, what FIFA has just done here is just tried to tick every single box to make it appeal to everybody. And that's something that every sport and every industry is doing right now. So if we're going to say the sport has to be kept as like a sanctuary, which can't be meddled with, well, we're way past that, Dave. We are way past that.
The best way, if your argument is we need to spread the beautiful game around the world. By the way, it's already like spread around the world. Like it's not like Europeans have had this domination over the game. I think that, look, it's the best way to spread the sport is to keep the fundamentals of the sport in place. And the fundamentals of the sport is not VAR, cooling breaks, 5 substitutions, a 24-minute half-time, interviews before. Like that's not the fundamentals of the sport. The reason that football is comfortably the most popular global sport in the world is because we've kept the core simplicity of the sport for basically 100 years. And only now are we starting to meddle with it. Like, apart from the back pass rule, there's been nothing else in our lifetime that's come close to the changes we've seen in the last few years. And I would argue all of those changes are basically a net deficit to the sport. And this idea that all old ideas are bad and all new ideas are good just isn't true, man. Like, why do you think, like, old books have stood the test of time? Because the ideas in those books are read and reread, and people think there's value to them, like, hundreds of years later. Like, some old idea...
Robbie Williams is doing the halftime show. That's an old idea that's still good. I mean, that's still going. Like, it's obviously works. I get it.
I think, look, you can change loads about the sport, but you shouldn't tinker with what made it so successful. And I know where this ends. It ends with football not being the most popular sport in the world because we're so complacent. You talked about me being rude and obnoxious, Ollie. Let me call you out and say that the actual arrogance of people to think that football will just continue to be the most popular sport in the world when you are unpicking the very beauty and the core concepts that made it such a simple, perfect sport. That is the real arrogance here. Don't you think, by the way, that the kids now are going to grow up and they're actually going to be like esports fanatics? By the way, esports World Cup in Saudi Arabia, absolutely flying at the moment, $70 million in prize money. I'm all aboard that train. But don't you think that these kids are going to be involved in different things? I think to ensure that football is still popular in 100 years, you need to keep the actual core elements of the sport the same.
Mate,
it worries me what I've seen at the Club World Cup.
Kids were already into like video games and stuff more than sitting down and watching a game of football when they were young. Like that's a trend that's gone through the last 30 years since video gaming became kind of really popular. Well, even older than 30 years. I'm talking like late 80s basically. I was chatting with a friend of mine who I kind of said like, oh, is your son getting into like football and stuff? Got him the Arsenal kit for his son's birthday. And he was like, look, he likes it, but like he can't sit down and watch a game of football at the moment. And I was like, well, when you were his age, could you sit down on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon and watch a game of football unless it was like something really special? And he was like, well, no, I don't think I did actually. I was like, we see this whole idea of like getting the kids to watch it for 90 minutes is an impossible thing because kids just don't have that attention span. We never have had that attention span when we were young. The difference is that attention spans are getting even shorter now with everything that's happening. So it's never about the kids, but it's about hitting the late teenage years and above. And that's the market to try and get watching football. And that's the market to get watching anything to do with football, whether it's a halftime show or something. So that's what they're going for. Like I said, I don't like all of this. You know me, I'm the most miserable man in podcasting. Like
I'm getting close though.
I don't think anything should be changed with anything since about 1996. That was when everything was great. No, make football great again. But like,
we got to talk about Donald Trump just briefly. It's like I don't know how you can't watch that and just find it incredibly entertaining. Like if you hate that, then you're taking it all too seriously. So that's where I sort of.
What was weird was DAZN have got an exclusive interview with Trump. I don't know when they showed it because I only saw the bit at halftime where they cut to some reporter and Trump in the stadium. At halftime, by the way, let's just bring all of this together of what a mess. In terms of you want like some analysis and some breakdown of a 3-0 drumming that Chelsea have just handed out to PSG in the first 45 minutes. And what you get is a sentence from each of the highly paid analysts that are down there on the in the studio in the stadium with Ali Adedipo.
He's great, by the way.
And then you get this weird cut to the halftime show, and then a weird cut to Donald Trump saying, "I love the sport, tremendous sport." Yep. And then we're starting the game again. We've got no breakdown. So why? It's gonna save broadcasters so much money. This sort of thing. They're not gonna have to employ half the pundits that they normally do because there's no time to do analysis because we're all just watching everything else.
They could probably interpret what happened in the first 45 minutes by the medium of interpretive dance or some kind of like music.
That's a halftime show.
They can be like a rapper just rapping about like the tactical breakdown of Maresca's Chelsea against Paris Saint-Germain. Surely that's the way to combine two worlds.
And then, I mean, Donald steals the show, doesn't he? He steals the absolute show. When Reece James turns and kind of goes, "Are you not leaving?" He's like, "No, I'm going to stay with you guys." He's blocking out Cole Palmer, like the man of the match of the final, arguably the player of the tournament. And Trump has stood in front of him as the trophy's being lifted. And you see Palmer has to like weave his way around Trump to get involved in the celebrations. It's just... This is
I don't know, man.
Now.
And what's he going to do at the 2026 World Cup? I mean, if that's his... this is a man with nothing to lose now, right? It's his last term. There's 3 more years of him, and then...
I mean, there's a speech, right? There's of course in the opening ceremony.
So, yeah.
There's a long speech.
I'm barely joking about Trump taking a pen. Like maybe it should be Trump against. I Show Speed takes a pen against Trump with Trump in goal, or I don't know, man. Or maybe every former living president has to be in goal against I Show Speed's penalty. There's something there, man.
Yeah, there's going to be I Show Speed is told by FIFA he has to do a Panenka. That's the only way Trump is saving it. But then it makes Trump look good of like, oh, you tried to get me, but I've got it. I'm too fast for you. You're I Show Speed.
And don't think
but
I
I'm
Show
faster.
Speed won't sign that contract as well, because that's the most famous man in the world, and he didn't get there by saying no to stuff. So,
oh mate,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know who that guy is. I've seen clips of him over the years, and I have no idea what he does or who he is. And he just loses his temper a lot and gets crazy. And then...
But he's a character. Anyway, we're sidetracking. Should we get back to... I want to say another thing about the Club World Cup, though, which is possibly a little bit contradictory, but I actually do think, despite my criticisms of the Americanization of this particular tournament, I actually do think, and I've said this before, that the Club World Cup will, in the fullness of time, become absolutely massive. And it could become the club competition in global football. I do believe that, Ollie, because conceptually the Club World Cup makes perfect sense. If you just think about it conceptually, in this globalized world, to have a truly globalized Club World Cup, it makes way more sense, by the way, than the Conference League or the Nations League or some other random competitions we've just created in the last few years. Now, forget the Americanization angle, forget Trump and Infantino and the money and all of this. To have a truly global Club World Cup is genuinely exciting. And I think when you look at new competitions, I mean, the World Cup, for example, the inaugural World Cup was in 1930. England didn't even take part until 1950 because they thought they were too good for it. Only 13 nations competed at the 1930 World Cup because most nations weren't bothered, the travel, didn't think it was going to be big. And look at it now, absolutely, obviously it's the World Cup, right? Same in many ways with the Champions League. I mean, Real Madrid took it very seriously and won the first 5 European Cups, but nobody else did. It was only later that they did. So the Club World Cup, and there's no doubt in my mind that it will become an absolutely massive tournament. I think it may become the biggest club tournament in the world. It's not going to happen tomorrow or in the next 4-year cycle, but over the course of the next few decades, I think that there's a very real possibility it will become that when you consider the distribution of wealth within football. You talk about the money in Saudi, and MLS is growing, and maybe Brazil are going to get their act together a little bit. So it's entirely possible that those nations do produce better clubs, and this European dominance does shift slightly when you look at the economic position Europe's in as a whole.
No.
So my point here is that the Club World Cup eventually will be absolutely massive. And despite the fact that I've got many, many, many criticisms of what I've seen over the last month, I think the concept of it is watertight.
The concept is a nice idea, except for the fact that it's very difficult to hail Chelsea as the best team in the world right now when they're in it for winning a competition 4 years prior or 3 years prior. That seems tough, especially after the season that they've had in the Premier League, obviously not being close to competing for a title. That was always something, because a World Cup, International World Cup, comes around once every 4 years, but because players come in and out of the squads, but in general, a lot of the key elements of squads are about the same every 4 years. There'll be players that were in previous World Cup squads. Nobody goes to a World Cup with a brand new 25 players none of them have been featured in the previous World Cups. Or if they do, it's generally a smaller nation. Whereas in this competition, and to be honest, it would take some further research that at the moment, at this point in the summer, Dave, I'm not really prepared to do, but to go back and look at the squads and the players that remain in these teams from when they qualified to where that we're playing now in this competition. Because Chelsea could easily have had 20 new faces in that team in the last 3 years, quite easily. And that makes it then really difficult to make the argument to me that Chelsea are the best team in the world at this point after winning this. It doesn't make them the world champions to me, because arguably this team over the last 2 years wouldn't have come anywhere near close to qualifying for this competition. So that's something that a lot of people won't even look at it that deeply, won't even make that sort of, they'll just go, yeah, that's fine. Chelsea are a big side. They're in it. They earn their spot. They get that. And they're the Club World Cup champions. They're the best team in the world right now. But you look a little closer and I think you'd be able to pick quite a few holes in the idea of this being the kind of defining tournament for clubs. And
Let's talk about Chelsea.
I don't think the European bias, by the way, financially is going to help when you look at how well the European sides have done and how much prize money is going to them compared to a lot of the other teams. I mean, Fluminense have won 50 million with this competition, which is a huge amount of money for a club like Fluminense. That's massive. Palmeiras, 29 million. But Chelsea have taken 84, PSG have taken 78, Real Madrid have taken 66, Bayern have taken 42, Borussia Dortmund have taken 38, Man City have taken 37.8, Inter have taken 26. Like,
I guess my point is here, Ollie, that, 30, 40 years ago, European football reigned supreme. But now, when did the MLS come in? Like 25 years ago, something like that? The MLS didn't even exist. Now it does, and it's there, and you've got the increase of participation in football in North America. In South America, obviously, it was always been bigger than football. But then, you add in the Saudi money, which... Okay, we don't know the longevity of that, but you'd suggest they've got a few quid and they're looking to back this long term when you look at Saudi's overall participation in sports. So my thing here is that I don't think there'll be a continued monopoly of European clubs because it's essentially whoever's got the money, and that money is spreading out around the world, will be able to compete. So I can see a Club World Cup in 40 years' time where it is Al Hilal against, Botafogo in the final. I can see that.
Yeah, that doesn't scream great to me in terms of just then it all becomes down to the money though, doesn't it?
Can we talk about Maresca? Let's talk about Maresca because
he was playing down the chances of winning this final massively, by the way, and talking about how knackered this team is and saying that going into the Premier League that they're going to be dead on their feet. It's been 36 months or something really since his side have had a break. So I'm very surprised. Was very surprised Chelsea pulled this off.
I mean, I don't think we've even mentioned the fact that... Yeah, so, look, I think with Enzo Maresca, I think that's just who he is, Ollie. I think that's his personality. Because earlier on the season, when Chelsea were, a couple of points off the top of the Premier League in maybe October or something last season, he came out and said, we're not in the title race, we're not in the title race. So I think that's just who he is. I mean, you hear him talking at a press conference and you're kind of leaning in, aren't you? The guy's whispering. So he's very sort of softly spoken. I don't say this as a criticism, by the way. Many different forms of leadership and the big brash ego in football management, as we've talked about before in this podcast, maybe it's waning slightly, and that more softly spoken, manage the players, pacify everything, that could be, if not the only way to go, then a way to go. But if you're Enzo Maresca, Ollie, apart from I think he had a brief spell at Parma in a managerial role, 14 games. If you just ignore that for a moment. Apart from that, goes to Leicester, finishes top of the championship with 97 points, something like that. Then he comes to Chelsea. Chelsea fans aren't having him, let's be honest. Speak to any Chelsea fan, especially the match-going fans. They don't like him, they don't want him. Comes in, finishes in the top 5, wins the Conference League, and now wins the Club World Cup. So he's done the double, and the Club World Cup, as I say, is big. So they've done the double, finished top 5 in his first season. That's against a backdrop of fans not really wanting him, a squad which isn't really his squad. He's just been dealt all these players. Loads of them are high quality. But I think Maresca's undersold. I think if he had a bigger personality and he was a different kind of talker, then everyone will be saying Maresca's a genius.
If he was more bolshy and aggressive as well. If he carried it... Because the way he carries himself, because everything's kind of playing it down, it gives you an air of a man that doesn't almost have any confidence in himself. Whereas...
And we're not used to that in 2025, are we? Because we're used to people being like, me. This is the amount of followers I got on this social, and it's a very much self-promotion world.
But I bet that makes him really good with the players. I bet it makes him fantastic with the players in terms of not being soft. I have no doubt that every single football manager, however soft they like to come across as, can play the hard man with players if and when they need to. But I think that makes it easier for the players to know that they're not dealing with a guy that's making it all about him. The success he has, he will always credit to his players, his team, and will kind of just, I've put everything together, but they've actually gone out and won it kind of thing. And I think that sort of attitudes can be really beneficial. When you're not having success, obviously things change, but things are difficult when you're not having success anyway. But I imagine the players really respond to it and really do well with it with that.
Crystal Palace. I want to try and explain this to myself as much as anyone, Ollie, in 3 concise sentences, okay? So, UEFA have a rule where they do not allow clubs owned or controlled by the same person or entity to compete in the same competition. John Textor owns 77% of the French club Lyon, who qualified for the Europa League. John Textor owns 43% of Crystal Palace, who won the FA Cup and therefore qualified for the Europa League. Now, UEFA are saying that Crystal Palace is controlled by John Textor because he owns 43% of the club. Crystal Palace are saying that Crystal Palace is not controlled by John Textor because 43% is not 51%. So this is where it gets a little bit messy. The Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parrish, said the decision to remove Crystal Palace from the Europa League next season is the biggest injustice in the history of football. And Palace are arguing that John Textor does not have decisive influence at the football club. UEFA have dismissed this, not accepted it, and Crystal Palace go into the Conference League. That's my understanding of it, Ollie. Does that make sense to you? Have I missed anything out that's crucial there?
That's the short version. There's a slightly longer version when you get into dates, because there is a cut-off date for any potential complexity around ownership to be finalised and sorted with. I think I read it was April, early April. So if Palace or Lyon had thought, oh, this could be problematic, then they could have done a reshuffle somewhere to make sure that there was no conflict of interest and both teams would be able to be in the same competition. The trouble is Palace and Lyon both haven't really booked their spot in the competition until after that deadline. Now, something similar happened actually with Manchester City and Girona when they were in the Champions League, because City's ownership is also owners of Girona as well. And UEFA actually gave them an extension to be able to make some sort of changes to the financial setup where it became like a shared trust rather than a clear owner of some sort, to allow both of the teams basically to play in the Champions League, is the long and short of it is. And UEFA gave a deadline extension to City and Girona to be able to get that sorted. So it seems very unfair that UEFA haven't given Palace and Lyon a similar deadline, because Palace have also tried to say, well, we could create a shared ownership style that would then officially remove that influence of Textor, which would then allow us to be in this competition. And UEFA's just like, nah, we're not going to bother. And that's where the real injustice, I think, for Palace fans comes in, because you've got an example of where arguably a bigger side in a bigger competition in the Champions League has been given that option and that extension to right the wrongs so both teams can play in the competition. And this time UEFA are being like, nah, we're not going to bother with that. No.
I mean, Crystal Palace can appeal. They can go to the court of arbitration for sport. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work because the new season, starts pretty soon. So they need to get a judgment on that pretty quickly. Look, I can understand if you're a Palace fan. Well, first of all, if you're a Palace fan, you won the FA Cup. That's the thing that really matters here. Whether you play in the Europa League or the Conference League, I understand it stings. I understand I'm not a Palace fan, but really, all it's about the first silverware in their 100+ year history. I mean, that's the thing that lasts here. I understand the frustration, I do, but if you just zoom out slightly, look, the fact they won the FA Cup's the big thing. The other thing that I've talked about before on this podcast, but I will say it again, for a club like Crystal Palace, you can win the Conference League. You can actually win the Conference League. The Europa League, there is a little bit of a step up in that. I mean, Tottenham and Manchester United, obviously they got to the final last year. I do think that was an anomaly. I think you'll see better quality sides get to the final of the Europa League next season. And in terms of the Conference League, I mean, Crystal Palace can win the Conference League. That is possible. So I think we'll wait to see what happens. It'll be very interesting if they do end up staying in the Conference League and go on and reach the final. And you talk to Palace fans there, like, all's well that ends well kind of thing, maybe. But I feel for Palace, I do, especially Palace fans and players, because they're not, this has nothing to do with them. But John Textor, actually, I heard he was on TalkSport, Ollie, and I rated the fact that he came on TalkSport for a live interview and was grilled by Jim White and Simon Jordan. And he was very honest and just said, I didn't... I mean, it's not you don't really want to hear like someone that senior saying this.
I didn't know.
But he was like, I didn't think this was going to happen. And it's like, you'd like to think anyone in those kind of massively senior positions have mapped out every eventuality with their business. Quite obviously not. And he was like, look, just didn't think this was going to happen. And he said, Jim White asked him, what was your emotion when Palace won the FA Cup? And he was like, shit. And he actually had to bleep it out on the radio. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's quite comforting that human beings operate like that. I don't think this is the end of the world for Crystal Palace. I really don't. I know it's going to sting, and it's easy for me to say as not a Palace fan. But you're playing in the Conference League. I don't think it's the end of the world.
Well, I almost think it's slightly better, isn't it? I mean, as you say, I think the likelihood of winning the Conference League is very much higher than it is of winning the Europa League, right? So wouldn't you rather, when they get to Leipzig in May next year, have Palace in that Conference League final and then have the best... I mean, look, Palace fans are unbelievably good supporters in terms of the creativity and choreography they create, particularly in the Holmesdale Road end down at Selhurst. Can you imagine the banners they're going to have brought, anti-UEFA banners, saying like, you can't keep us out, here we come, Europa League, etc. Just waiting to be unfurled when they beat like Slovan Bratislava or somebody in the Conference League final. I think this is a better thing in the long term. It's going to eat crap for the transfer window a bit for Palace because it's a stronger selling point. We're in the Europa League, and also this might be the only chance that Palace get into Europe for the next 50 years or something. You never know. Like it's really difficult.
You want to
for a
go
club
deep
like
in
that.
a competition if you're in Europe, right?
Yeah, but you also want to play the greats. Like there are so many supporters that would say, "Oh, I'd just love to see like a Juventus coming to Selhurst Park or something like that." Going deep in the Conference League only matters to a fan once you get deep and you're semi-final and final. I don't think Palace fans will care about like Rapid Vienna, HJK, and all these kind of clubs that are on the periphery and on the continent turning up at Selhurst Park for a winter Thursday night group game. That's not going to be a big sellout and a big draw. Whereas those Europa League groups, the standard's just that little bit higher, as you touched on. I'd love to see like a Sevilla turning up at Selhurst Park or someone like that. That would look great. But it's a tough sell for supporters in the short term. But I do think in the long term, there's a big reward potential on the line and a much better narrative as well of like giving a middle finger until obviously Lyon qualify for the Europa League again the following year, and then it all happens again. It's like, well, also,
yeah,
Lyon were meant to be relegated because of financial improprieties, right?
Yeah.
So if any club's going to miss out, the owner of the club that has financial irregularities should surely fall on his sword and say, we've ballsed up over here with Lyon. That's the side that shouldn't necessarily be in the Europa League. And I would have thought from a business point of view, having your Premier League side, the biggest league in the world, the most watched league in the world, the most financially profitable, having them in the highest position possible would be better. So is there no way... I think because Palace won the FA Cup, that doesn't take precedent over league positions to UEFA, which I think is ludicrous as well. I mean, it just devalues the FA Cup even more. That a fifth place finish in French football or something like that is more important than winning an actual piece of silverware in UEFA's thoughts. But if I was John Texeter, I'd be like banging down the UEFA door saying, can we just swap these around? Like, Lyon can rebuild themselves with success in the Conference League, and I can have my big financial powerhouse ploughing through into a Europa League that's more interesting and a bigger sell for me. But hey-ho.
AC Milan against Como is being pitched that this Serie A game could possibly be played in Australia.
Crikey!
It's inevitable. I don't know whether it happens next season. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 more seasons, but this is undeniably inevitable. We've already seen what La Liga games? I can't remember. It's the Copa del Rey or some element goes into gets
the reshuffle of the Copa del Rey.
Yeah, is it the Copa del Rey?
No, it's the Super Cup, isn't it?
The Spanish Super Cup gets played in the
so
UAE
does the Italian Super
Italy,
Cup. So does the French Super Cup. They've moved them all now to foreign shores. But this is a new step. And Como are a big story in Italy, with Fabregas, and obviously the kind of rebuild of Como has been has caught the eyes, ears, and attention, and then you're taking one of the biggest names in Italian football. I just didn't realise the Australian-Italian link was that strong. I mean, I know one of the reporters out in Italy, Adriano Del Monte, is Australian but lives in Milan and does a lot for TNT and CBS and things like that, covering the Italian football. But have I missed the strong links between like Italian immigrants going across to Australia? Is there?
I think, well, first of all, on the Como thing, Ollie, I think it's interesting. Why is this a big story? So Como were promoted last season, right? So they're going to play in Serie A this season. Yeah. And Cesc Fabregas is the coach, is the manager. Yeah. But I think why the Como story transcends a little bit is because of Lake Como, to be honest with you. Like there's something there. It's that kind of, people know Lake Como. They think about the elegance, they think about Italian beauty and this kind of thing. And I think there's a lot to that. And that's, of course, Cesc Fabregas is a big name, but I do think the fact that it's Como, if it was an Italian town that people hadn't heard of, then I just think it wouldn't touch it in the same way. So I do think that's a big part of it. Look, AC Milan against Como, I mean, if it gets played in Australia, what's the pro argument? The pro argument is that you're spreading Serie A around the world, and Serie A is so far behind the Premier League, as are all the European leagues, really, in terms of money. They're desperately trying to catch up somehow. Maybe if you play one game in Australia, you can play another in Saudi or something next year. So that's the kind of pro argument to it. The con argument is, what about your Milan fan that's gone to every game since 1997, and now they can't go to every game because the game's been played in Australia? I mean, it's sort of absurd. But we know where this ends, Ollie. And it ends because the World Cup in 2034 is taking place in Saudi Arabia. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that in 2032 and 2033, the years building up to that, there's going to be an El Clasico, Real Madrid-Barcelona in Saudi Arabia. I think the Premier League might still be able to hold off for another 10 years just because the Premier League doesn't need to be played abroad. It's already a global product. But I think for sure the other European leagues are just bought and sold. And I think El Clasico in Saudi is an absolute inevitability.
Yeah. But they need to establish some more figures like Ronaldo and Messi. Barca doesn't really have, I suppose, Yuri. Yeah. But that's still not dug in, I would say, yet. Like 4 or 5 years, might be the turning point for that. So I'm just thinking on my feet. I was also trying to read about the Italian-Australian immigration. And there's been quite a lot, actually, of Italians going across to Australia. Yeah.
Well, Windsor rants, Ollie Wilson.
Well, no, I was genuinely interested and was like, why is this? But apparently there's a lot of Italians have kind of gone out there pre-World War II, post-World War II, and there's been like...
I mean, Italians went everywhere, man. I mean, what about the Italian immigrant? Like, half of Argentina's got an Italian grandmother. Like, it's half the reason that... Do you see Italy sort of recently changed their kind of passport rules by descent? So they tried to tighten it all up. Because actually there's so many people that could potentially apply for Italian citizenship via their grandparents. Yeah. And I think that the concern was if everyone did that at once, you've got another 5 million citizens to potentially look after. Anyway, so...
But it's not like these... I mean...
By the way, the Not Another Politics pod is not too far away. It's really not, folks.
Yeah, but that's going behind a huge paywall, I tell you.
I wouldn't put a single one of those out for free.
Like both clubs can afford it. Like obviously Como have got these owners that are like, it's the most financially profitable club I think in Italy now. So
say that again, sorry.
So Como are owned by I think they're South American brothers, but it's like 48 billion their net worth or something stupid like that. So Como are now the richest club in Italy because of these owners. That's why like Fabregas has gone there. He's not gone there because, let's be a part of the Como story. It's like, well, if we get into Serie A, there's going to be money to spend and players to be bought, and there's a project taking place here. So they've got a horrendous amount of money, and Milan are obviously like a huge global brand name. So it doesn't surprise me that the billionaire owners of Como want to expand into other territories and be the first feet on the ground in Australia in terms of trying to hit that target audience. Very difficult when you're playing Milan. Like, of the two sides, who's going to be more well known? But I kind of understand it, and Milan will say, well, look, we're not having the best of times at the moment. Like the Serie A title was won like 3 years ago, not been great since in terms of being able to compete for it. Let's be a part of this instead and get some good favour with the league. And it's one of those like, oh yeah, we're supporting the growth of Italian football.
Ollie, so Como are owned by a company called Jarum, who are based in Indonesia, and they specialise in cigarettes, technology, banking, and food. I mean, that pretty much covers every single base: cigarettes, technology, banking, and food. So yeah, I think it's fair to suggest
I'm pretty sure there was like a local corner shop that did the same thing back in the 90s, you know, like they've got a cash point, they've got cigarettes, and then you can buy all your canned goods that you want as well. There's one just around the corner from me. It's also got a post office, so actually my corner shop is better than this.
Right, let's talk about the sport. Wimbledon final between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. Jannik Sinner won in 4 sets. He was actually really comfortable. Lost the first set 6-4, and then was just in total control of the whole contest. This is a great rivalry that's emerging now between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. It was interesting, Ollie, because during the match, a couple of people messaged me and they said, why doesn't this feel as good as like the Djokovic, Nadal, Federer rivalries? Like, why doesn't this feel as good? And it didn't. It didn't feel as good. And my answer to that was that Carlos Alcaraz is 21, Jannik Sinner is 23. You're comparing the initial stages, the fledgling stages of a great rivalry with like the peak Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer, late 20s, early 30s, really, when they're all kind of at their absolute peak. So it's an unfair comparison because you're comparing something that's new and just starting. Only the second time these two have met in a slam final. The other one was 35 days ago at the French Open where Carlos Alcaraz won. So you're seeing like the beginning stages of a rivalry. And for a rivalry to be truly great, I do think you need, 5 years at least in the bank of head-to-heads where you can see their personality, when you can reference previous matches, etc., etc. So I do think there's something there. I think what's also interesting is Alcaraz now has 5 slams to his name. Sinner has 4. Now, Novak Djokovic obviously has 24. Like, 20 from here is a lot for both of those two players. But equally, Ollie, they're so much better than the rest of the field, these two. Like Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, no one is close to them in this field. Whereas back in the day, there were 3 of them, and also Andy Murray took a couple, and Stan Wawrinka took a couple. Like, there's no one close to these two. And just, you always have to caveat it with, like, injury-free and assuming the mentality's still there. But if it is, 10 more years, 2 slams each a year, like, you're getting close. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a super exciting rivalry. And the men's tennis absolutely needed this. Really needed this after the big 3 kind of dropped off. So there we have it. Jannik Sinner, drugs ban earlier on in the year and raises the Wimbledon title in mid-July.
That wasn't mentioned that much on the weekend, I have to say. The drugs ban didn't really come into the equation.
He served it.
Yeah, he's done his time.
You do the crime, you do the time. It's like someone walks out of jail. I don't know, like what they did their time. So I don't know what you.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate and being a dick to him basically. And I think you're right. Like I couldn't have said it better. You're comparing apples and not even apples and oranges. You're comparing an apple seed to an orange. Like you need to let
an
this
apple
grow.
seed to a fully formed apple.
I suppose, yeah. The fruit podcast is a long way off the NASP fruit. I couldn't agree more. We're watching what is the start of a great rivalry. If you watched Federer and Djokovic beginning of their careers, that's one of those ones where you say, I was there and I saw that. And these are the kind of early slams which people will hold on to in 20 years time and go, well, I saw him at that Wimbledon final in 2025. That was Sinner, sensational, decimating Alcaraz. And I was just surprised at how both Wimbledon finals were straight sets, and like it was more competitive obviously in the men's competition.
Yeah, 4 sets in the men's. But yeah, I mean, look, the women's final, let's talk about it then. Amanda Anisimova got beaten 6-love by Iga Swiatek. Iga Swiatek, one of the most kind of underrated sporting figures in the world, Ollie, in the sense that she's this Polish girl who's kind of humble, doesn't have the branding maybe appeal of like some other female tennis players that people know far more about. Or, she's not as kind of big on TikTok as some of the others. So yeah, I think I mean, 6-love in a final, mate, under an hour. Hasn't happened for over 100 years at Wimbledon. Hasn't happened since 1911 in a women's final at Wimbledon. I mean, it's a bad one, that. And you can just... Obviously, Swiatek, it was clinical and ruthless, but really this is about Anisimova just completely freezing on the biggest moment. I mean, freezing. It's a bad one, that.
Wasn't it under 50 minutes as well, or something stupid like that? Not just under an hour, but like...
It was under an hour, certainly.
Yeah, rapid fire. Yeah.
Imagine you bought a ticket for that, by the way.
Oh, that got on my nerves throughout these last 2 weeks, by the way. Of just like, why do we have to go to the Royal Box? Ever since Cliff Richard did his singing all those years ago, it's Wimbledon's 90% about celebrity spotting and, who's in the crowd? Who's this? And it's like 90% of the no.
Mate, it's so good. Like, it's so good. Because, like, not everyone's a big tennis... Well, the vast majority of people aren't a big tennis fan. But you slick on the Wimbledon final, it's like, you know, Kate's in the crowd and she's laughing with her daughter. That's kind of cute. And, Matthew McConaughey's there. And, blimey, that's, Rod Stewart having a chat with ISO Speed or whatever. Like, it's just good stuff, man.
You know what? That is because the simplicity of tennis is... It's so easy to watch a tennis match if you knew nothing about it and know what's going on. It's mano-y-mano. There's clear line distinctions, which after a few shots, you'd be like, I thought that tram line on the outside would be in because that's the edge of the court. Oh, no. Okay, that's out. Oh, right. Like, you can get it inside a couple of games, which is good because you're not allowed to talk during the points, so no one would be able to tell you what was going on if you didn't know. And that's why, like, every celebrity, and it's obviously... And this brings us back to, like, the Wimbledon traditions we've been talking about. Like, you have to go there looking reasonably smart and well-dressed. Not just in the Royal Box, but if you're in centre court, you're expected to be looking pretty sharp. You don't see many people in T-shirts and caps. It's flannel shirt and boaters. You know what I mean? Like, there's just an edge about it. And I don't know if it's a written rule. I've never been down to Wimbledon or if it's an unwritten rule.
But you've got to go next year, man. You'd like it, Ollie, a lot. It's a really great sporting spectacle. Maybe we'll take the pod on tour for episode 100 to Wimbledon next year.
Do we do the queue? Do we do an episode in the queue at Wimbledon from like 4 a.m. or something? That'd be an interesting... I heard somebody reviewing the queue and said it was the worst thing they've ever done in their life.
I mean, I think it's become a bit of a parody of itself. And then, like, for some reason, all BBC's content around everything's so cringe. Like, feels like your dad doing social media or something. It's just, I don't know why, but it's just...
Somebody was like, you have to queue to get into the queue, to then get into the queue. You've got all these people just sat around just popping champagne from like 6 a.m. in the morning and whatever, and general kind of toffery, which the person reviewing it didn't like. I would love it. I'd be fine with that. There's no problem with me. But then he said once you get in, it's so difficult to get onto any of the courts because there's such big queues for the courts as well, that he was just like, I went to a couple of the outside ones for a few hours and then just basically left at 4. Like, I was there from 3 a.m. until 4 in the afternoon. It was rubbish.
A champagne cork did actually get on the court at Wimbledon in the men's final. I don't know whether you saw this, but someone popped a champagne cork in the crowd and it went on just before Sinner served, which, I mean, not really acceptable at all, to be honest with you. Like, why are you popping a champagne cork as someone's about to serve?
Bringing a whole bottle of champagne into that should be the thing. Like, you can't bring a bottle of champagne into... The only other place you can do that, really, is at the cricket, which screams of the similar levels of pomp and circumstance, which again, I don't really mind that, to be honest. I mean, I like the fact that at Lords you can still take like 1 bottle each per person into the ground with you. So you're not restricted to having to like buy extortionate cricket champagne and stuff like that. So you can take a bottle in your picnic basket in the morning. And then if you're very smart, you go out at lunch, have lunch somewhere and bring a couple of bottles in with you again for the afternoon session. But
Ollie, we've got 10 minutes left. I'm going to give you the floor. Any other business, any other sport? What do you want to talk about? What's caught your eye?
Yeah, it's the Open this week. It's the last major in golf, the British Open. The Open Championship, as it should be called, rather than the British Open, like the Yanks like to call it. Yeah, it's Rory going back to Royal Portrush to try and win another major this year and perhaps just complete what will be considered one of his most successful years in the last few decades. I mean... or at least in the last decade, we're finally getting
Thursday to Sunday, right?
Yep, Thursday to Sunday. It is bright. I mean, we saw this week at the Scottish Open, which all the big guns come across to get a bit of links practice in and playing it. Rory was second in that, but didn't have the wherewithal to get it over the line in the end, unfortunately, on the back nine on Sunday. But the Scottish Open at the Renaissance Club was just dried out to ridiculous nature. I mean, it's so hard, the ground, and so dry that balls are running. They're hitting a driver 370 easily kind of thing just because of the rollout and how much it's going. So with that in mind, Portrush is bringing the rain for Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, which could either be great or it could be a bit naff, because one thing that you do want for links golf is hard greens. The inability to stop the ball on the green easily, if it's rock solid, is great. But 4 days of rain and not much wind suddenly makes the rain softens everything up, so they can start firing at pins rather than having to fire like 5-6 yards around an area and run balls into it. So we could end up seeing some very low scoring this week at Royal Portrush, because the ground's going to be that little bit soggier and they'll be able to stick the ball onto the green.
I did play golf on Saturday.
Yeah, how did this go, by the way?
I can see it, man. I can see why people would get into golf. I genuinely hadn't swung a golf club in 15 years, but let's say it's just like the little par 3 course or whatever. But you only need 2 or 3 good shots even in a mini round to be like, oh yeah, that's pretty satisfying. Mm-hmm. And I do get it. Plus, there's like a lovely social element to it. Like you get your 10,000 steps in, a bit less on a 9-hole. But like, I can totally see it, man. I think there's a lot of like admin involved. Like it's not a small sport to take up. You've got the golf clubs, you've got to get there. There's like the membership. It's not, it takes hours. So there's definitely like, it's a bigger commitment. So I can understand when people start it and maybe they get 10 lessons, then they really are in for the next 10 years. But yeah, as a social, really, really nice. And yeah, as I say, like 2 things struck me. First of all, it's interesting you mentioned the greens. You just need to touch the ball on a green and it absolutely flies. And having not like done anything except for crazy golf for years, the first time you putt, you think, yeah, okay, I'll give this a bit of something. And it just whizzes off and you're really surprised by it. Yeah. And then it's just incredible how all the old advice about just eyes on the ball. I mean, you would give me golf advice last pod, Ollie. But it's so easy for your eyes as your club comes down to hit the ball. Yeah, just to go up. I don't know whether that's like an anticipation thing or like a body movement thing, but your eyes like immediately want to go left. And so to actually keep your eyes on the ball and your body through it's very, very tricky indeed.
It's the desire to watch where your shot goes, because particularly if you're trying to avoid something or aim at something, there's that, I want to see it soaring all the way. And you're going to have time to see it if you don't look up early. And if you do look up early, it's never going to go, or a lot of the time it's not going to go where you want it to go. So, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. That's the middle-aged man. The first taste is free, and then you're going to get...
it's not something I'll pick up, I think, till I'm about 50. Just because I think it's a smaller window to do other stuff. But I get it. I totally get it. Any other sport? I did watch the Lions as well, Ollie. Lions warm-up and before the golf, so it was a bloody rugger and golf day, wasn't it? Like,
oh my goodness.
I mean, the Lions. I mean, yeah. Like, look at as I say about rugby, no one really understands the rules. Worse than football in terms of the game stopping. Like, the sport stops every 5 seconds. It's absurd. And then the Lions absolutely battered this like New Zealand invitational team. So it's the equivalent of like a 9-0 against Gibraltar in football. But yeah, quite entertaining. I quite like the concept of a Lions. Like, what is it? The British and Irish Lions. I quite like that as a concept. So.
Yeah, the
cricket. You're a cricket fan.
I'll get into a test series for sure. So I've been dovetailing this week so much with the golf and the cricket especially, because I don't know loads about cricket. Obviously, like Ben Stokes, Joe Root, and this is probably going to take us over time. But there's nothing nicer than just kind of being in a very comfortable position after having done all the things you need to do that day, and just settling in with like a day of cricket. T20s and stuff is good to go to. But on television, the kind of ebb and flow and the sway of momentum can only really be felt over a long 5-day test match. And I've really enjoyed the bits of the series I've seen against India. I think we on day 5. How did it finish yesterday? Because we are on the final day today, the 3rd test. And it's one apiece.
England and India seek victory on final day of thrilling 3rd test.
Yeah, so that's going to be, while I do some life and admin and probably do some editing on this to make sure we're under an hour. That'll be the day sitting and watching the cricket.
All right, to make sure we are under an hour, let's have a 2 sentences on the Tour de France. A couple of my mates are cycling fans that listen to this pod. Do we care? Should we care? Is everyone still on drugs? Who's winning it? What's going on? Merlier wins sprint finish as Van der Poel denied epic breakaway triumph. Do those words mean anything to you, Ollie?
Unfortunately, like, Lance Armstrong was the best thing that ever happened to the sport for getting eyes and ears on it. And the fact that he was doping, the value lost in his wins is incomparable to the value in terms of attention he gave that sport. And until they find a Lance Armstrong, it's very tough to get some eyes on cycling.
I'd probably get rid of the helmets and the visors. I'm just looking at a picture of it now. It
Make
falls
it
into that
risky.
thing where I can't take a sport seriously, Ollie, where you can't see the emotion on the people's faces. So that's why I sort of don't like swimming or fencing. I can't get into the Olympics. So, and F1's the same for me. So I think I'd try. I get there's a health and safety element there, but if you could get rid of the visors and the helmets, I think you might reel Windsor in as an additional Tour de France.
Bring in the very, very old school levels of alcohol that were consumed during a Tour de France stage as well. Because before, like, painkillers and doping and stuff, they used to stop off in the towns, the cyclists, and grab like bottles of wine and they'd drink while they were cycling on the tour to numb the pain from the exertion of it, which I think now in the modern day sporting arena, like, a couple of drinks would make cycling, when you're in one of those big pelotons and you've got one guy in the middle who's had a couple too many on the bike, that'd make it very dicey and exciting going up some of those hills or on some of those downhill climbs as a mass group, because you're really trusting that the other riders around you know what they're doing and are able to follow the lines. So I think that would be a good reintroduction to get me back into cycling. But no, I have to say, of all the sporting events this summer, the Tour de France is probably going to bypass me in the end.
I was told on the golf course on Saturday, Ollie, that the Ryder Cup is called the Ryder Cup because there was an Englishman, Samuel Ryder, who was 50 years old and he was unwell and he went to his doctor and asked for advice, and the doctor said, you need to start playing golf. Have you heard that before?
I didn't hear that. I knew it was Samuel Ryder. I know it's named after an English bloke, but I didn't know what. I've never looked into the origins of.
Possibly
Ryder.
someone was having me on the golf course today. I don't know, but it sounded like a good anecdote. So there it is. It's out on the pod. We're less than an hour, I reckon, on Not Another Sports Pod 51. Over an hour.